Welcome back to Locked in My Office. I'm Shane, and in this episode, I've got special guest Lauren Husted to help out, and we're talking with Holly Hassel, a professor at Michigan Tech who just recently was on Jeopardy for actually the third time. And so we kind of discuss what it looks like to prepare for something like that and kind of some of the things that happen behind the scenes. And also, we take a look at just other stuff like productivity and things like that. So it's a really good conversation. And next week you can look forward to my episode talking with members of the Daily Bull. So that should be interesting. And always remember that if you have a friend, a colleague, a professor, whoever may be around the Keweenaw area or on campus or whatever, if you'd like to recommend them, for a podcast episode, that would be great. And you can do that at oberloier.com/limo, oberlawyer.com/limo, and you can make that recommendation. Would super appreciate it. So thanks for listening, and without further ado, so here we are. We don't have an audience, so I'm the only person that gets to applaud. Anyways, locked in my office, and I'm here with Holly. Holly, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Holly Hassel. I am a professor in the humanities department, and I started my position here at Michigan Tech in fall 2023. So coming up on, I guess, 6 months about.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then we got a returning guest host, Lauren, over here. Super awesome to have you back.
I've only been here for about a year, so we're both pretty new.
All right,
Yeah.
newbies. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason we're gathered here today is, so Holly, you recently had a exciting thing, right? You were on Jeopardy.
I was a contestant. I guess a contestant for the third time on.
Wait, it's the third time?
Yeah.
Oh wait,
only
I thought it was only the
second.
second time.
Well, it's the third game that I've played. That's what I mean,
Gotcha.
I guess. Yes. Jeopardy. America's favorite quiz show, I believe, is their tagline. And wait, should I just start talking about that?
Yeah, for sure. Whatever you want to say.
Okay. So I recently returned from the Jeopardy Champions Wildcard Tournament, filmed in Culver City, because I had previously played early summer, had an episode that aired last year in the summer, and won. So I can officially add Jeopardy Champion to my, business cards.
Wait, is it on your resume, or are you going to put it on your resume?
I definitely have a little section where
You do?
I say other accomplishments.
Yeah, you got to put that on there.
I mean, there's other stuff on there too. I don't remember what, but so I played 2 games when I was there, obviously because you win and you play another one, and then
that's right. Yeah, okay.
This time through was a kind of an invitational where if you had previously won a game during season 39. You came on and competed to be part of the Tournament of Champions,
Gotcha.
which is already kind of set.
Can you, so I went to the watch party, and I was actually surprised that someone was there that wasn't familiar with Jeopardy. And so... Can you explain just real quick what Jeopardy is or what that seems
Sure.
like?
So Jeopardy, America's favorite quiz show, has been around for decades and decades and decades, right? I mean, I don't know the whole history of it, but 70s, 60s, Art Fleming, I think, was the original host. Most people associated with Alex Trebek, who was the host for pretty much from the 80s on out. It's a televised game show that's got a unique question and answer format, right?
Yeah.
So you get 6 categories. They usually have some hook or commonality, and they're what they say is that they provide you with clues, right? So it's usually a statement of some kind or a word, and you have to answer in the form of a question, so figuring out what it is that they're looking for. So they might be a big fat tabby. And you're like, what is a cat? So.
Gotcha. I hope this doesn't upset you, but I've always kind of felt I never understood why you had to answer in the form of a question. Oh. Like it just seems kind of gimmicky. I'm not trying to be.
No. I wonder. I mean, I don't actually know the history of why that is, or even how that started. But I think it's partly because it adds like another sort of creative cognitive dimension to the gameplay. That like it's just like one more challenge, I suppose, in addition to like the knowledge and the speed and the is this idea of this like kind of specific format.
Yeah.
It's kind of like branding, too.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to know, like, if somebody says, even if somebody just poses a question and someone responds, what is X? Like, you're going to be like, oh, that's from Jeopardy.
Everybody knows that's Jeopardy. Yeah, exactly.
It's like a brand propagation thing because now, like, people think in terms of that, like, as a joke.
Yeah. I mean, it's just become part of the culture. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the word zeitgeist mean?
Spirit of the times.
Spirit of the times.
What is spirit of the times? You should say I don't know. The definition of the word of the spirit of the times. What is zeitgeist?
Yeah, because I was thinking about that word the other day, and I feel like Jeopardy and like the what is thing is kind of part of the zeitgeist, kind of a little bit. Yeah, interesting. Because I just realized I don't fully know what that word means.
Yeah, I think that's what it means in German. But yeah, so that's and then there's the Jeopardy round, which you can earn. There's 6 categories and 5 levels, and you can earn, whoever selects the category selects it first, and then there's a buzzer competition essentially of who can buzz in the fastest and answer correctly, and then you get control of the board. And so there's single round, and then there's double round. I mean, the addition is if you land on, you're lucky and you land on what's called a daily double. Then you get to like wager some of like your money or your points that you've earned, because each of the questions you get correct gives you money. And I mean, I guess it's actually real money in the end. And then you follow with a final Jeopardy round where everyone gets the same question and they have to bet money on whether they think they've got it right.
What's the strategy for the size of your bet?
Oh my God! There's actually so if you were to go, you mean for daily doubles or
for the is it Final Jeopardy?
Final Jeopardy,
yeah, the Final Jeopardy.
So there's actually there's a really super expansive website called J-Archive that you can go to and look up the history of every single game that's ever been played. It'll show you the board. It'll show you the questions, the amount. It'll show you who played it. It'll show you how much they get right. And they actually have a wagering calculator. Where there's a whole system. I mean, of course there is. Like, this is people who are on Jeopardy are just total nerds, right? It's just like 100% people who are nerds, like loud and proud, and like that's who does this. So for sure, somebody created this website with like every tool you could want on it. That's got its own like discourse, its own vocabulary. It's got like things that I like. Coriat scores is a thing. It's like a specific. The people who are really into Jeopardy are really into Jeopardy.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Like it's this, this calculation that you can do to sort of, as you're playing, to kind of track how much you would technically get, right, based on how much you know minus this thing, and it's real complicated. So there's like a wagering calculator that you can go to there, and. My wager was technically a correct one of the 2 correct possible wagers for my bet.
Okay.
Yeah, for the situation I was in for my third game.
Yeah, so what was the question in the third game?
You mean the clue?
The clue, excuse me. Yes,
okay.
Sticking with the branding.
So the way that the Final Jeopardy works is, you go through the 2 rounds, and then the host will say, your Final Jeopardy category is, and then the category will come up. So mine was presidents and vice presidents. So there's all this like mathematical calculation you're trying to do in the short amount of time you have, which is really the commercial break. Like, it's really the commercial break. And to be honest, math is not my strong suit, but it's fine. And so you have this time to look at what the other players have and what you have. So like I had 8,800. The other person next after me had 13,200, and the person in first had 14,000. So you're trying to calculate like, okay, if I'm Ron, I have to bet to cover Daniel. And so I'm going to bet this much, which is, I'm going to bet 13,201. So that if I lose it and he bets everything, then I can cover it by $1. I'm trying to figure out, you can either try to bet high and hope that other people get it wrong, or that the middle guy makes a small wager because he's got 13,200. And if I feel more confident in the category, I would bet high, or I could have bet nothing, which would assume, I guess, that no one else bets nothing and they all get it wrong, right? Like there's
a lot of game theory involved in that.
Totally, yeah. And so for me, with this last game, I actually think, so the other thing that's on the Jeopardy website is like super detailed Jeopardy statistics. Like like my game, all my games, anybody's game, you can go and look and it'll show you like buzzer percentage of times you attempted to buzz in, percentage of times you actually got in, percentage of answers you got correct, your total number. So like I am like a stat, I'm into that kind of data stuff. So I haven't gone and compared my games, but I think I played a better game. I think this is my best played game. It's in terms of like buzzer attempts, buzzer percentage, correct answer. One of my goals for myself playing this time around was to be more confident and be more assertive, because I definitely, the first 2 games got kind of risk averse. I was sort of like, well, I got to think if I know it, and then I'm going to get, and I knew that with the gameplay, with people who are already other champions, I just had to bring a better game, and be more. And you can see in my stats, my statistic I'm most proud of is that I was worried. I was spending a lot of time thinking about buzzer speed, because it's buzzer speed, like it's buzzer speed.
Make or break, yeah.
Yeah, it's makes or break. And in my first, which you saw, the first round, the first Jeopardy round, I got in 35% of the time that I tried to get in, which is, about a third, right? So there's 3 people. This double Jeopardy, I actually got in 65% of the time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think that's the right number. I'd have to double check. But like, I feel like I made a real shift in terms of my playing in the second half, where I like figured out a buzzer kind of strategy and was able to make it work. Yeah. Even it also just meant that I sometimes got in on questions that I didn't know the answer to, because I was like, I'm just buzzing in aggressively, right? And then I was like, oh, no, wait, I'm in. I have to answer it.
Yeah.
What was like the energy of all the other contestants? Like, I'm assuming that you probably had downtimes where you all were in the same space hanging out together.
Oh, a ton.
Like, I'm sure nobody was like really intense and like, oh, I can't talk to the other contestants.
No.
I'm sure everybody was super friendly.
Not this time.
No. Did you have an experience like that where they were like,
for sure,
can't talk to
kind
you?
Of. Yeah.
Wow.
And I heard from other contestants that they had also had experiences like that with like the super serious players. Yeah.
So people just like were so intense. They're like, I'm not here to make friends. I have to.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
wow.
Totally Big Brother, not here to make friends or Survivor or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I would say there were definitely people who were like, so this time around, it's also just like the logistics of the gameplay. Like a tournament was really different than like my initial tape day. So my initial tape day, they're going to tape 5 episodes. There's, 16 or 17 people there because they're going to do 5 games, and they have alternates in case something happens. And you're really just there for a day, right? And so I got to know some people, people I played against, people I kind of hit it off with right away. You can kind of tell. I mean, I'm not like a super intense type on that, I was like, I'm here to make friends, like, wow, cool. Like, there's like people I'm definitely staying in touch with and visiting if I'm in there. I my first week, there was this woman, older woman, like in her 70s. She's a children's book author. She's like written like dozens of books, and she's from New York City. She's totally amazing. Really just connected. We were only there for like the day, like just the morning. But then we connected on social media, and when I was in New York City last year, like we had like coffee together, and I'm gonna go next month, and we're gonna get dinner.
That's like such a special little bond. That
it really is
too. That's so cute.
Yeah,
I love that. So not only did you leave a winner, but you left with more friends.
I left with friends.
That's so cute.
Yeah, but there were other people that I would say were real intense, right? And I was like joking around a lot, and whatever. I'm not afraid to say if I don't know stuff, but there were other people who were. I could think of one person in particular who was just really like, I'm here to win, and I'm here to bet big, and
Do you think they end up being the winners, or do they end up?
Well, I played that person.
Yeah.
I mean, the second game, and that person, yeah.
I'm just kind of wondering, when they come in with that attitude, if they're like.
Well, but I think what then happened, at least if I think of a player of that type, then I don't know that you enjoy the experience, right? Mm-hmm. Like, unless you have the specific outcome, then you're disappointed because you feel like, you had this idea about what the outcome was going to be that you can't predict, no matter how hard you work or study or plan, because there's too many variables that you can't control in the game of Jeopardy. How fast other contestants are, whether you get a daily double, whether you get a daily double that you're going to get right, whether whether you can, So I think, that person in particular, I remember talking with after the game, and they were just like so disappointed and like, oh, this is terrible. I'm so big, I'm not gonna have a watch party. It was just terrible. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, you were on Jeopardy. Like, this is amazing. You should totally have a watch party. I don't know. So, so I tried to not go into it with the sort of like, this is like a cool experience that I'm having, and it's fun, and I get to meet lots of really interesting, smart people. Why wouldn't you? I think I felt good about how I played. There were at least a couple of them that other like Jeopardy people came up afterwards and were like, man, none of us knew that one that you got. And I'm like, thanks. Yeah. It's like the ultimate Jeopardy compliment. None of the other Jeopardy players knew.
Like, out of the players that you met, was it like, were you surprised by anybody's background at all? Because I'm sure it's like such a range. Like, I know you said the one woman she writes children's storybooks. How cute is that?
Yeah.
And you're a professor, and like, I'm wondering like the range of people that show up to do this.
It's really interesting. My husband and I talk about this a lot because we watch Jeopardy every night, and so I think that there are certain professions that lend themselves better to being good at Jeopardy, and I don't know if that's just like they're like what the chicken and the egg is there, right? Mm-hmm. But you see journalists and writers, I think, represented quite a lot, and editors. And I think that's because, like, my husband was a journalist for a long time, and he's like, you have to write about whatever they tell you to write about. Like, you got to learn it. If they say go cover the tractor pull, you got to go do that, and you got to make it sound like you know what's happening. You got to go cover the art exhibit or the quilt show. You got to do that, right? And depending on where you are, I think that's a job that you have to
pick stuff up. Yeah.
You have to pick it up. You have to, and if you don't know about it, you got to read about it. And and the same with one of the people who was playing with me this time, Tamara, who was an editor at, I think, the University of Chicago Press, and is someone who's just like, you read, maybe you read in a specific area, science, but like you're going to read everything that comes your way. And so you're going to learn, And so, there was, an editor, there were 3 other professors, I think.
Okay.
But the only reason I think for that is because they separated the Champions Wildcard into 2 tape weeks. And the one I was in was before the semester started. So I think a lot of
scheduling.
I think that was not a random sampling exactly, but just the people who weren't going to be in the middle of the semester. But during my first tape week, there were a couple of writers, people who worked in writing intensive fields like marketing writing or journalist writing. I don't know. I just think people who, and then some explanation for that perhaps is that, people who they're good at words, and a lot of Jeopardy is like wordplay, vocabulary, books, Mm-hmm. So let me think about who else. Let's see, economics professor.
What were the age ranges? Was it pretty diverse as far as like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even in the Champions Wildcard. So I think one of the winners from this week, he was maybe 23, 24, mm-hmm. works for the federal government in like a housing agency. Mm-hmm. And then there was Martha Bath, who was playing in my tape week, who won this season, but then had been on previously when Art Fleming was the host in like the 60s or 70s.
Wow.
Like she had to be in her 70s, and she was playing.
That's so cool.
In the quarterfinals.
Oh my gosh, how fun would that be to do like an episode where they pull people like who did it like 30 years ago?
Oldest living people.
Yeah. Like
it's
only the OGs, or we find their grandchildren. We're like, the grandchildren.
I actually think that's the Hunger Games. No.
Ah.
I think that's the third Hunger Games. Yeah, no. But I know. And because for a long time they were very specific, Jeopardy was really had more specific rules about like whether you could come back or not. Like and it used to be before Ken Jennings, after you won 5 games, you guys don't remember this, but I do because I was alive in the 80s. Like after you won 5 games, you were done. Like you couldn't go on anymore. You just were finished. So that was one of the reasons why there weren't like super champions up until like Ken Jennings, I think, really, because it was prohibited. So
I have a history question.
Is it about Jeopardy?
It's about Jeopardy,
okay.
Yeah. So
because if it's just history, I probably won't know it.
Well, so you made me think of this question when you said that kind of like the whole experience was a blur for you.
Yeah.
Has there ever been like anyone who's been drunk on Jeopardy, or where they probably wouldn't air it, or has there ever been like a case where someone's like?
Well, that I don't know for a fact, but I can say that like that was part of the conversation. So when I did my first tape day, there was a couple guys who were there as alternates, and one guy was like a TV researcher, which was like a super cool job. And they often have someone who like lives in the area, right? And it is in case somebody like, I don't think someone would show up drunk to Jeopardy. Like, I think
Yeah.
most of the time, like, it's really hard to get on. And so, like,
Yeah.
a lot of people have been, like, trying for years to get on.
Yeah.
I don't think that people would, like, mess it up by being like, oh, I had a few drinks at the bar before I came here at 8 in the morning, right?
You know, sometimes people like handle stress like differently.
No,
Like you
it's
finally get it,
possible,
you know.
Right.
It's possible.
A shot in the car before they
Right?
walk in.
Just take some gummies or something. It's not impossible. Yeah.
I feel like that
You
would be
wouldn't
more
know.
likely. And they'd
Yeah.
be like, I'm better when I, you know, I'm
Right.
better
I'm
if I
gonna
take
keep
the
me
gummy.
really-
Like
yeah.
it's all there.
I feel like it might you'd make up with you'd compromise reaction time perhaps with that, but yeah. Or someone gets sick, right? Like,
yeah.
you know, there was actually a situation during my tape day where one of the players, an older player, took a fall down some stairs while she was going onto the stage, and like, you know, it looked like she might be seriously injured. And so there was like this pause, and then everybody had to they had to bring in like medical people and just to make sure she was okay. And she did end up like luckily being fine, but it was like that might be a situation where like if she had hit her head or, you know, they would have had to bring in the alternate.
Yeah.
Wow. Imagine how much work you put into like getting there and being in Jeopardy, and then you fall on the stairs.
It was really,
That would
really
be
scary.
crushing
Yeah, it was
and
horrible.
scary too.
Yeah.
But you know, after like finding out you're okay and like maybe you're getting medical attention, you're like, why? Why would this happen right when I was about to get
No,
on
I
there?
know.
Oh.
It ended up being, I think she then was able to tape later
Okay,
that day.
good.
But
good. I'm glad
you
she
know.
still got to do it. But
Yeah.
Well, so I guess that does beg a good question of like, how do you get on Jeopardy? Like, how did you get on the very
Sure.
first time? How
Yeah,
did that work?
so the process is pretty elaborate. It's not, I don't know, you don't just walk in the door. So they do what's called, because it's a knowledge competition. So they need to make sure you have people on who know stuff, right? For everybody's entertainment and also for your own, like, you don't want to be the person who gets, like, eviscerated on Jeopardy. So you take what's called the anytime test, and it's a 50-question, like, general knowledge test with lots of different, you know, sort of just any, like you'd watch on Jeopardy. It's pretty much similar questions. It used to be that you had to actually go somewhere in person, and like you know, in the 80s, mostly like big urban areas. So if you were you weren't near a big urban area, it was pretty much a lot of work to get over to actually take it. But now they do the online, really after COVID, you know, they do a kind of asynchronous online anytime test. It's 50 questions, it's timed. You have a certain amount of time to answer each question, you type it in, and then if you score high enough on that, which is, again, you can take any time. Yeah, you can take it. I'm not looking at you all.
petrified.
Yeah. Well, it's just
If Shane and I can put our two brain cells together,
Well,
maybe we could both make it.
So then that's why the second phase is you have to go actually on like a Zoom, like a synchronous Zoom call where you have like a lockdown browser and there's someone watching you take it, right? Like on the Zoom.
Like a proctored test.
It's a proctored test, you know, just to make sure that you're not like doing that or whatever. So if you get high enough score on that, then they call you for a third audition, which involves a Zoom call. It's not exactly a mock game. It's like it's like you're there with other people. There's like 9 people total, potential contestants, and then 2 people from the contestant coordinator team. And they're like, just hold a pen and pretend like you're buzzing. And it's really just to see like, can you function under sort of stress and can you communicate normally with others? So like, you know, so like you sit there and they're like, okay, so we're gonna have Holly and Jeff and Steve, you're gonna go first. And then they project the board and they do I think one thing most people don't know is that when you buzz in, it has to be very specific timing. You can't buzz in before Ken's done reading the question, and you can't buzz in before there's a buzzer guy who's like sitting with the writers when Ken's done reading the question. That guy presses the activation button so that your buzzers work. And that activates a blue light, like around a bank of lights that's around the board. So if you buzz in before the light comes on, then you're locked out for a quarter second.
So the blue light is the
that's
cue.
the signal.
Yep.
But the blue light is triggered by the guy. So
So are you actually watching the guy kind of?
you can't see the guy.
You can't
You
see-
just know he's
okay.
over there.
Gotcha.
Well, that's what happened. That's why I think my buzzing percentage was higher the second I stopped looking at the lights. I just like decided to listen because I wasn't getting in.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm just gonna try to time it with the guy, which that worked a lot better for me actually. But yeah, so then I forgot where I was going. You buzz.
Oh, no, we were asking how you got on the show,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Okay, so the third stage is actually then they have the screen like with the actual lights and everything, and they'll call on you. Like you can buzz in once you see the lights, and then
This is still over Zoom?
still over Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you play like a few sample, board, categories or questions, maybe 8 or 10, and then they actually do like the mock kind of interview, like they try, want to interview, like how Ken does in the middle of the game. Oh, I forgot, I didn't mention that part. In the middle of the game or actually after the first commercial break, the host will, ask you to tell some kind of a like funny little story or anecdote about yourself, and they're often really cringy, and we actually never watch them at my house. I can tell you why. Now I know why.
Embarrassment or
Yeah.
something.
Oh God, no, totally. I am completely like a secondhand embarrassment person. I'm just like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Now I know why they're embarrassing, which I can tell you. But like and I think it was interesting to watch because on my third audition where it was like, I could tell there were people that I was like, that guy's doing a good job. Like he's talking about, whatever, a normal thing, and he's kind of personable. And then there'd be some other person who was like talking for 5 minutes about orchids. And I'm like, you gotta like know how to like pick up the conversation, Bob. So I think they're kind of like judging, can we put you on national TV?
You got the personality for it. They're doing personality checks.
Pretty much.
That's what it sounds like.
That's what it is, yeah. And then if you make it past that round, in Jeopardy parlance, you're in the pool. You can be in the pool for up to 18 months, which means that anytime in the next 18 months, they might call you and ask you to be on.
Wow.
And so you just have to wait for 18 months. And if you don't hear from them, you can take the test again. So I had to wait about 9 months, 8-9 months. Yeah.
in the pool.
In the pool. I was in the pool. I was here on my job interview when they called me.
Wow.
Really?
Yes.
Did you bring that up like
I
during
for
the
sure
interview?
did, because
You're
it was like
I'm gonna
I
be
was
on
like
Jeopardy.
freaking out, right? Because I was like,
Yeah.
I literally have to, like, the search committee chair came up to me and I had just gotten well, actually, I had missed 2 calls because I don't check my voicemail,
Yeah.
and the search committee chair came up and I was like looking at a text. It was like, "Hi, this is Laura from Jeopardy. We left you a couple messages," and I was like, "Oh my God!" And like she came up, she's like, "Oh, is that your kids or what?" And I was like, "Oh my God, it's Jeopardy." What? I'm like, I try not to be on Jeopardy, and I think Jeopardy's trying to call me, so I just like I need to call them right now, right? And it was like right before I was supposed to go give my job talk, and so I was just like, blah, blah, blah.
That's awesome.
Have you ever had anything else embarrassing happen during a job interview?
I don't think that was embarrassing. I think it was awesome.
Well, okay, so I shouldn't say it's embarrassing.
Me, actually, right?
Yeah.
They're like, we were going to hire the other person, but this lady's not going to be on Jeopardy, so that's pretty cool.
Well,
yeah.
If she's on Jeopardy, she's good. We gotta hire her. Right?
Yeah.
Why? I feel like you want to tell
you
me a
have
story
any
about
experience
something
with
No,
embarrassing.
I mean, yeah. So in undergrad, I did have one that popped up. Yeah, but yeah, in undergrad, for our chemistry stockroom at the university, I applied for a job, and and so my boss, his name was Steve, like showed up to my class. He looked at my class schedule and like showed up and said, "Do you have time for an interview right now?" And I was like, sure. And I was like in like swim trunks and like a tank top or something like that. Anyways, and so I like walked to his office, and it was one of those cases where I was like, oh shit. And I had a bloody nose, and it was like all of a sudden this profuse, like, it was because I did a bunch of cocaine beforehand.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
No,
As one does.
no, but yeah, and so I had like blood pouring out,
that's
and
great.
so I did my whole interview like
Yeah.
with like a wad of stuff in there, and I got the
That's
job.
kind of a testament. They were testing your sort of like, can you remain calm in an emergency situation?
I suppose,
Yeah,
yeah.
or awkward.
Yeah.
They're like, that guy, he held it together. He didn't
Yeah.
get weird about it.
Yeah. What about you, Lauren? Do you have anything
I
ever
don't
weird
think that
happen in an
I've
interview?
personally, I've not had something bad happen in my interviews. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm very good at interviewing. So
No,
most of
that's
the
a
time,
hard skill.
it's it takes time to learn it, but I did a lot of practice. So that's one thing I'll tell students when we're talking about like career fair and stuff. I'm like, you literally need to sit there and look at all of the common questions and type up your own answers and then practice saying like, because it's a performance. Interviewing is a performance,
Right.
and it is about like showing your personality and being personable, but you're performing. It's not like a regular conversation. I've actually interviewed people before though, and I've had some weird interviews before, for sure. I've been part of interviews that I didn't organize, that I had to just walk into, that were very ill prepared. Not
Right.
the candidate, but like the person
no, yeah.
hosting the interview didn't do a good job, and then it's like, really awkward. I've been part of interviews where people were too familiar with the candidate. And this was a situation where they were too familiar to the candidate to the point where they were being rude to the candidate in the interview. And I didn't know like the situation and how they knew each other. But apparently it wasn't like good background. But I'm sitting there like in shock of how like rude people, like the other people, the panelists are being. I got the background story later. But probably the weirdest interview I was ever part of was a guy that was interviewing for a position years ago at a place I worked. And he literally told us a story about how he got super drunk and was like publicly indecent and lost his previous job. But don't worry, because he had to rewrite his frat's constitution because of that experience.
He really learned.
So he learned his lesson. And we were all like, what?
Okay.
Maybe not something you should share in an interview, but what was crazy is one of the other people on the interview panel with me was like, I don't know, I thought it showed really good vulnerability. And I'm like,
okay, I mean, I can see that point of view, I
do we
suppose.
need someone vulnerable in this position?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've had some interesting experiences, but nothing really bad in my interviews, which is good so far.
Yeah. How do you prepare for, how do you train, especially like, how did you train for the champions thing, because you kind of already knew what to expect? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I tried to learn what I could from the first time being on, you know, about what my weaknesses were. I'd say I knew that I needed to get more confident in the buzzer because I would second guess myself. I mean, I think that's maybe a little bit of an academic mindset too, to be like, well, it could be this, but maybe that, I don't know, right? And so I had to sort of like really practice training, not just like hanging around and only clicking in on things that I knew for sure.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to make up a better system, you know, where I told myself, like, I'm going to just, and in fact, my husband and I did approach it kind of systematically. Like, we would play along with games and he would keep score. And he would say, okay, just guess everything that's in the top 2 rows. Like, buzz in on every single one. And if you don't know it, you don't know it. But like, if you do know it, and we'll see how it works out mathematically. And doing that made me realize that like, I was right more than I was wrong, right? So it paid off for me to do that, to always buzz in on the first 2 rows.
Yeah.
But I would not have thought about that the first time I was on. And then sometimes during the game, you know, you watch the game, like the Holly's comment question that I got, where I was like, I did not know the answer, but I was surprised to find myself buzzed in, right? Yeah. That happened on a couple, and like one time it worked out, and I just guessed the right thing a couple times actually. The Enigma one, the art ones, where it was just like, I don't actually know anything about art, but and then there was a couple that I feel like I was like, well, that looked stupid. But yeah, so I mean. So that, definitely thinking more about strategy and more about gameplay, I think that was the biggest difference, was the idea like I'm not necessarily, I knew I had to sort of study and try to memorize some things that I was, that are not like a really deep cut in my, even a shallow, like in my knowledge base. I mean, I worked a lot on countries and capitals. I worked a lot on presidents, American presidents.
Is there a lot of president questions?
Well, it ended up being my final Jeopardy one. Yeah.
What was the question? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was.
Or what was it? The prompt, or what is
the
it?
The category was presidents and vice presidents. Okay. And it was basically, really the question was, who were the first? What was the state? Okay, so it wasn't a question. This state was the first outside of the 13 original colonies from which a president and vice president both were born in. And so, like, what, you know, you can approach that a couple of ways, right? You can be like the guy I played against who was an encyclopedia of knowledge, right? Who afterwards was like, well, I was thinking through, you know, Van Buren, Tyler Polk Taylor, like in his head, you know, trying to run through like where everyone's from. And I was like, I wasn't thinking any of that, right? Like, I don't know any of that. Like, the question itself was, I knew I could eliminate 13 colonies, right? I was like, okay, there's definitely not those. And there's probably only like 7 plausible answers, honestly, right? As far as like...
all this is going through your head in like that split second.
Right, well, you get the music, do, right? And, you know, so you just, on that one, you know, a lot of them, you just have to like take a guess. You know, I mean, my guess wasn't right, but actually no one else got it right either. So,
So funny thing about presidents, and this is funny because this is going to bring people back to the episode that Shane and I did. I just learned this recently. So the episode that Shane and I did, it was the 3rd episode, I talked about how I recently fell off a roof. Yeah, so you should listen to the whole story. It's good. But I didn't know this, but I met up with some friends who were with me that night because when I fell, I was like out cold and like it was it was a big experience. But apparently the EMS were asking me questions to make sure I was like lucid, right? Because they ask you like your birthday, blah blah blah. Apparently they asked me who the president was, and I immediately said Obama, and then I was like, wait, no, his sidekick, his vice president is president now. But immediately I was like, Obama. Yeah. And I was like, why did I say that? It's the first president that popped into my head. So
he was the president for a long time.
Yeah. I just thought that was funny. So I was like, really? I said that?
But it also might have been because, you had brain damage.
You could be right. You had traumatic brain injury.
Yeah. Hit my head a little bit. Imagine if I had lost my memory and I was just reverted back to when Obama was president. Had no memory.
Live your whole life that way.
And there'd be some really great things that you would be cutting out of your memory, actually.
Yeah, that's true. It could be a way to protect my mind, you know, like, but I wouldn't remember I worked here. Like, what would they do with me, you know?
Yeah.
Just start over.
Start all the way over. They'd be like, go back to admissions.
Wait, did you work in admissions before this?
I've worked in admissions at other places a few times. So they'd be like, well, at least we know you know how to do that. Okay. So.
Yeah, so
I always forget to say the views that we share in this podcast don't necessarily reflect the views of Michigan Tech. So with that out of the way, I have a question for all of you. You ready?
All of us.
Are you going to answer it too?
I suppose, yeah.
Okay.
If you had a presence, are you aware of the dark web?
Mm-hmm. Like that it exists?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I've watched Criminal Minds.
Yeah. So if you had a presence on the dark web, what would be your alias?
Too hard to think of right now.
You mean like a name? Like a That's such a
sorry, I should have pre-asked that question.
Like a screen name or like a. So this is the same as like
your handle.
So like your Twitter handle or something.
Yeah. But it has to be like
dark
spooky.
web. Well, I don't know. I asked my students about it today in class, and they thought it'd be really funny if like it was just your legal name and then like hashtag and then your social security number or something like that.
Well, you would probably want to pick something that isn't anything that somebody would think
I know,
of
that's the real.
Well, like it could even be an interest of yours. Like, let's say your favorite artist is Taylor Swift. You don't want that. You want to do something that's so out there.
Opposite of like Metal Mayhem 35. Yeah.
So like I don't know, maybe like Gunslinger. Something like because I don't have guns and I wouldn't be people wouldn't assume I have guns. I'd pick something really niche and weird that is so opposite of my personality. That's what I would do. Yeah. And I can't come up with anything right now, but no, because then nobody could track it and be like, oh, I know that she likes that.
Yeah, I heard it on her podcast.
Yeah, falling off a roof 40 feet.
That's your password. Yeah.
That's such a. What would yours be if you were going to do one?
I would. I think now my psychology would be I would have to go like the opposite of the opposite and actually go really obvious. And so it would be like Pizza Lord 93 or something along those lines. Yeah.
Sure.
Pizza Lord.
Yeah.
Maybe I would just call myself Charcuterie Board.
Charcuterie
awesome.
Board?
4, 3, 2, 1. I don't know. Yeah.
What the hell is
Charcuterie
Board?
You ever never had a charcuterie board?
It's a fancy word.
Crackers and cheese. And
I just didn't know that had a fancy name.
You've never?
What is charcuterie board?
What is charcuterie board? Okay.
Someone's knocking on your door.
We have a charcuterie board.
I thought my office hours would be okay. I think.
Well, I don't know. What's your practice? Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe it was Sarah wondering where those pictures came from.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Coming to tell you.
Yeah.
Some strangers sending me cat pictures.
You need to experience a charcuterie board.
I've had one.
But
I
now
just
you need to experience it. Now you know what it is.
No,
now
I know its name. Will that change the experience for me?
I don't know. Wittgenstein said the limits of my language are the limits of my world. So yes.
Oh yeah.
I have to take some. You should have told me that quote beforehand because I got to digest that.
This blew your mind. Yeah. You didn't know you were having a charcuterie board.
Yeah. Words are weird. Like.
Words are weird.
Well, like. So, with so I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, and just knowing like for every one word they speak, they can understand like 100 words, and so it's like crazy like the things that they like understand. And but speaking of words, normally I've got my like signature question I ask, but I have another question I want to ask since you are very acquainted with writing. What What books are you reading these days, or what do you recommend out there?
Those are two different things.
Yep. So 2 questions. Sorry.
Right now, I'm reading, so to be honest, not to go back to Jeopardy, but just to say I'm glad to be able to just read the things I want to read. Like I felt like I was having to just only read things that were going to give me knowledge for Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And so now I've just been reading like some like fun fiction. I randomly got a book off the thrift store shelf by William Kent Kruger, who's a Minnesota mystery writer. And I read one of those, and then I was like, there are 18 of these, and so now I'm going to read them all.
Oh no!
I love mystery series. I mean, I love mysteries. I love series. I don't know if that's just like a trauma response or what, but I just love something where I'd be like, I know these characters. I know how this plot's going to work. I know how this writer's going to be. So that I started. When I was at a conference a couple Novembers ago, a writer came and spoke. Now I can't remember his name, but his book's called Solido, and it's about migrating to the United States from Ecuador, from Latin America, but without his parent, and basically as an unaccompanied minor, and getting sent through with some other adults that were being led by a coyote, and like he was like 10. So it's just this kind of like memoir of his.
Wait, is it a true story?
It's true. Yeah, it's a memoir.
Interesting.
So he was interviewed at the conference, and I was like, that sounds really interesting. So. Yeah.
Lauren, you said you were like going to quit your job to take time to read this book that you're going to... What book?
Yeah, no.
What book are you expecting?
It's, well, I love fantasy books.
Yeah,
like, big fan. And I know what you mean by, like, having a series, because then I understand that, because you get, like, so attached to the characters.
Yeah.
And it's funny, because when I talk to people about books, they're like, oh, my God, I don't want to get into an 8-book, and they're huge books, too. And I'm like, I love that, because then I can immerse myself in the world.
Totally agree.
And honestly, I never really fully come out of those worlds either. You know, like Narnia is still like so ingrained in me from my childhood. But I read books from Sarah J. Maas, and she has like 3 different fantasy series. Some, you either love them or you hate them. Some people are like, this is too simple fantasy. And I feel like it's just very accessible. Whereas if you sit down, and I've also read the whole Witcher series. I love The Witcher.
Oh, okay.
It is just way more wordy. And I hate to say this, but I will not read J.R.R. Tolkien. I just won't sit down and read it.
Yeah, no.
I love the stories, but I can't, the writing style, and I know it's a thing of its time, but like, I do appreciate that there is like easier fantasy, and it's still complicated. The world building is a lot. I've read the books twice, and I still don't remember everything when I reread them. So I really like that it's like accessible, but there's so much, and it's, I don't want to say anything, because if there's anybody who reads the books, I don't want to spoil it, but I guess what I can say...
What are the 3 different series about?
Well, there's Throne of Glass, and it's kind of like Lost Princess, like doesn't know her destiny. She actually turns into an assassin, but then she finds out, you know, this really cool. And then it's like murder. It is murder mystery, actually. You'd really like, there's a huge mystery element. How do you spell it?
Moss, like M-O-S-S?
No, it's M-A-A-S.
Okay.
Sarah J. Maas, or Moss. Some people pronounce it differently. Crescent City is another one, and the 3rd book, that's the one I was telling you about, is coming out next week, and I wish I had taken time off work to
just read it. Yeah,
because it's coming in on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that one is also huge. All of them are very mystery, like discovery, like trying to figure out what's going on. That one is more like, it feels like steampunk fantasy, because there's cell phones, and it's like based in, everything is about like realms, worlds, portals, which is what I love about fantasy, because even the Witcher series is like that, where there's like all these worlds colliding, and there's all this, that same theme is in a lot of fantasy, but it gives you a lot of opportunity to wonder if the storylines are going to cross over.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. I also like fantasy.
Yep. But then when I finished the last book for this new book that's coming in next week, I have very emotional reactions to like these stories, because I'm so into them. I stood up, I screamed, I cried, I threw the book across the room, and I just had to sit there for a minute. I immediately called my brother, because he'd finished it before me, and he's like, I'm in bed. And I'm like, but I have to talk to you right now.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to talk to someone about your book.
Yeah, so you'd probably really like it if you like
okay.
that. Like,
I'll check it out.
And they're easy reads.
I love fun. I love young adult. Reading.
Oh, you're gonna love these.
That's I've done it all. I love to. Well, I always feel like I've read everything that's like really good out there. So I'm always like so happy when I hear about a different series. Yeah. What are you?
Oh no.
What are you reading?
Well, actually, right now I'm reading World War Z. Right, you loaned me that book.
Such a good one.
Yeah, you know, I like it. I guess So the idea is that the book is like a bunch of different like short stories that are like stitched together to kind of make a larger narrative. And at first I wasn't sure how I felt about that, like, because you can't really get attached to a character or something like that. But I'm starting to actually like get more into it. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through. But I had to take a break from reading that book because my wife had got me this book for Christmas. It's by Adam Savage from Mythbusters, you know. And so it's called Every Tool is a Hammer. And it's funny because I learned that I was going to get this book before Christmas because over Christmas break I was like talking to my wife Sarah and I said, I think I'm going to write a book about like making philosophy and stuff like that. And I was like, had all these ideas, and she like got like this look on her face. I'm like, what? Why do you have, like, I was like pitching all these ideas. And then she eventually told me, she's like, I literally bought you a book that is like, is that, yeah. And so, so Adam Savage, so I know he's like mostly known for Mythbusters, but he's actually like an incredibly talented like maker, and he makes like props for movies and things like that. And just a big geek about all things making.
Can I ask about this? Like, so this is something that is, I would say, this term maker and like making and like maker spaces, like that is fairly recent.
It's a rebranding,
I guess, of what, arts and crafts or what?
Well,
really, like I feel like
seriously, I did a project in the Plexus Lab with a bunch of high school students, and I was like soldering for the first time, and I was like, this just feels like arts and crafts right now. Like I loved it.
Yeah.
So a maker is a rebranding of just someone who creates things.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So, and it's actually, does kind of a little, it kind of annoys me a little because it was actually a real branding thing. So like Make Magazine came out and it was this branded thing, and then they started
like a
spinning
marketing
up these
effort. Yeah.
Yes, and then it actually became the term for people who like to tinker and 3D print and do electronics and all that stuff.
Okay. But there's an element of like tech maybe attached to it.
Not necessarily. So like a maker could be like making cosplay costumes and things like that, right?
But I wonder if it like turned that direction because of like tech making like 3D printing, and then I'm just curious about the history of the word. Like, then did the word spread to mean things like
I think
or whatever? Yeah,
I think the magazine was really big for a while. I don't think it was as big as it used to be because internet and stuff like that. But I'm not really sure. But you are right. It's been like in the last like 15 to 20 years that the maker term has become a big thing. But I just that was one of the things that I want to do in my book is actually like have a disambiguation about makers versus engineers versus crafters or whatever, like what that falls. And I kind of think like the term maker is making more for the sake of making, whereas like an engineer is like always like trying to solve a problem and like trying to do it exactly right, where like maker is kind of more of a fusion between like crafting and art. And do you get what I'm saying?
There's more creativity to it than like agenda, like I have to do XYZ. It's like, let's see what we figure out along the way.
Yeah.
And maybe less directly practical, like a lot of two things. First, not a lot of people are making things for the purpose of using them for something, right? Like the utilitarian value. And then maybe less gendered, right? Like I think there are certain kinds of like, you build things with Legos and Tinker Toys, and then you make quilts, and I mean their maker seems to be a kind
more
of
homogenous. Yeah, that's true. I never thought about that. Yeah. Do you do any making related stuff?
I make all sorts of stuff, but it was not like we didn't call it that.
You weren't under that brand yet.
No, I wasn't. I'm still not in the brand yet. Yeah. I love to embroider.
Like hand embroidery?
Yeah. So
I love hand embroideries that say like funny things.
Yeah.
Like it's all beautiful and floral, and it has like
fuck the world or something.
Something like that. Or I really want one made. I want to learn how to do it. I have like a little kit at home, and I just haven't sat down and learned. One of my friends, she loves to say, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss, and it's just a joke. It's so funny to me. She introduced that to me. She's a little younger, so I was like, okay, I'm like catching on to some of the lingo here. It was so funny. So I want to get her like a little. Actually, I made her a candle for Christmas, and I hid gold letters so when she melts the candle, oh my God, she'll see that it says gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss on it.
Okay, nice. Yeah, no, I quilts. I like to quilt. I also just think, well, okay, is making. To be a maker, is it like has to be a physical thing?
No,
Yeah.
I would not say so. So if
Yeah.
you do like poetry or something like that,
I mean, I write songs on my Casio keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every day.
Yeah.
I like to just
Yeah.
make songs because I like to just make songs because it's fun to be creative and express things. You know.
I'm surprised.
brain.
I'm surprised you didn't share that earlier. But so you shared that on the show.
Yeah.
That you were does Jeopardy now own the copyright to that thing that you said? Okay. So you wrote songs to practice, right?
Some, yeah. I mean, I was actually, I wish I could say that I'd written like 100 study songs, but they're not all like that. Like some are, I feel like some of my really like good ones are like countries that start with G.
Yeah.
You know, there's a song about that. I like my song about the Antilles. You know, the islands, the archipelago. Got a song about Eastern European capitals. Got a song about like football. I write about football games sometimes, teams.
Do you have any songs about something that's really like a downer, like Vlad the Impaler or something along those lines?
No, I mean I have a lot. I'd say they fall into several categories, right? Like I have a group of songs. There's like right now I think I'm on like 58 or something. So like I have a group of songs about like my cat.
Oh,
You know, I mean I have a group of songs about like everyday work things like meetings and emails. I have a group of songs that are NFL related. I have some songs that are about Christmas. My sister was requesting a lot of Christmas songs, so
Yeah.
just whatever. So I actually made a rule for myself. Like I had a set of rules that I created for myself. I found this keyboard and I was going to write a song using every single setting, and I have to use every single setting, and I have to use them in order, and I have to write it that day, and it has to be about something that happened that day. Like I can't like write ahead, right?
Oh, okay.
So that's what I've been doing.
That's like really beautiful like that's like beautiful like habit building stuff like having that constraint in there.
Yeah.
That's the thing I talk to students a lot.
Really?
Kind of like my habit building thing that you are literally seeing right now is I have to have someone to talk to for the podcast every Friday.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't care who it is. I'd like it to be as interesting as possible, but there has to be someone here. And the same thing like Tuesday, I'm always going to record an educational YouTube video. And so, right, so just having that and sticking to it, yeah, it's a...
But I don't even think I think about that idea or talk about it with my students, but I probably should. But like, so in your field, to what extent do you think it's important to talk about habit building? Like, obviously you do. So why? Say more about that.
I think it's because people don't talk about it enough, and so I actually talk about it a lot.
I want to start talking about it now.
Well, right, so
What should
like...
I say?
Yeah, so like, I devised this whole system. You know, it sucks. Okay, so, so those are two separate
things.
systems. Yeah.
Your
So
system doesn't
yeah.
suck.
So
I
my
love
system,
systems.
my system was dumb. Or my system was good, but before I had the system, I was really dumb.
Yeah.
And so, during my whole grad school career, I was just really inefficient and didn't really have a system to really tackle problems or like build habits or things like that. And I kind of have found afterwards that when you're in a lot of stress, you can't build at least I found for myself, I couldn't build a new system. I kind of had to drag myself through with what I had. And then I couldn't actually revise the way I thought about like self-improvement and stuff like that until there was no more stress or like,
Yeah,
you know,
because you're just like triaging.
Yeah,
or
you just gotta
getting
get yourself through.
underwater. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually this system, and it's on my website, and maybe I'll link it, is...
Fancy.
Yeah, so I played off the fact that I'm very, very intrinsically like frugal, like I don't like to spend a lot of money. And so like even if it's something I want, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm not, like it's $20, I'm not gonna buy that. And so what I did is I had this crazy system of, so I have a to-do list app, so it's called Todoist, and on that
Todoist?
Todoist, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you just eliminated the L in there.
Yeah.
That's
Why,
what
for
they're-
efficiency?
Todoist, yeah. Yeah, so like, yeah, I think that's another branding thing, like I'm a Todoist by like using the Todoist.
I see. Like
yeah.
a maker, but also
Yeah.
a Todoist. Okay.
Anyways, and so also I use the Pomodoro system. Have you heard of the Pomodoro?
Yes.
Yeah, so
It's 25 minutes on.
yep, you work 25
minutes
minutes off, then 5 minutes off, and then after like 5 Pomodoros, you take like a 25-minute break.
Oh wow.
Anyways, and so I started like integrating these things, and I would pay myself to do them. I'd have a little spreadsheet, and so it was, 10 cents for every to-do list task, and then 25 cents for every Pomodoro, and then I had like a couple like daily habits that would like be worth a little bit more. And so there's a whole bunch of things you could say like, well, couldn't you just game that system by having a bunch of stuff on your to-do list? But that's a good thing, right? Like having to like sit down and make like a more comprehensive to-do list is a good thing to do. And you could say like, well, couldn't you do to-do list things while you're doing a Pomodoro? And yes, that's the point, is to like sit down and say like, I kind of trained myself that I wouldn't do a Pomodoro unless I knew that I could work for 25 minutes.
On a thing,
And then it became the self-fulfilling prophecy where I would push the button, and now that meant that I had to work or really focus for 25 minutes.
Like behaviorism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
Pavlov.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I used that system for 2 years, and it actually worked really decently. And actually now the thing I'm doing is, and it's kind of interesting, I'm trying something else where I'm only using the to-do list and making them every day I try and make them as comprehensive as possible, like things I need to do. And I've kind of been slacking a little bit. But the interesting thing is, if I go to my website, I'm gonna find it and show you. I put a graph of my productivity on my website, so you can actually, so you'll actually be able to get a snapshot and say like, God, you're kind of slacking right now.
Is there like a comment function that we could be like, what's up, Shane?
Yeah, so you can see like the graphs. Like right now, I'm kind of. You can see the start of the semester was that hump, and then. And so there's this whole thing about like the reflection of like every day I gotta like put that number in there and be like, oh, my students are seeing this, and they're gonna think like I'm like not doing stuff. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I could see the strengths and weaknesses of that approach.
Yeah. There's definitely strengths and weaknesses, and it's not for everybody. Yeah. But anyways, so back to the idea about like talking about habits a lot.
Yeah.
I try and make my class or my classes habits, right? And so the idea is, when I first came up with this idea was to take my homework, which is normally 5 problems, and the idea was that you can just do a problem a day and get through it. And instead, I basically institutionalized that philosophy by making one homework assignment due on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and there's a 1-day grace period. So the idea is you could front load it, or you could pace yourself, but you can't procrastinate, right?
Right.
And so, and I've had a discussion with other colleagues about like, should we let students find their own systems for, self-accountability and productivity and stuff like that, or should we kind of like railroad them? And I think the beauty of the university is that professors all have their own takes, right? And so you're allowed to kind of push your ideology or your way of thinking, and so I'm kind of the force that's pushing to like, here's a way to build habits, and then other professors might not be doing that, but see if you can apply that same system. You know what I'm saying?
I think there's like I think there's some either middle ground or a reframing way of thinking about whether you're just sort of like forcing students to do something or like making them find their own way, right? I mean, like there's a developmental stage that students are in right now, which makes them receptive to certain different ways of thinking, right? So I'm always like about, here are choices that you can make, and so like it sounds to me like you're saying, here are some tools, right? And you can structure even within what you're talking about, like, oh, I'm going to do, that, I don't know if it's forced habit building, but like as sort of like an opportunity for habit building. And with some flexibility to recognize that, students have different demands on their lives. And I mean, so I don't know. I'm really sensitive to the fact that like faculty have a lot of power over students' lives, and I don't particularly like when there's any kind of railroading, sort of like do what I said because I said it, and and so because different students have different levels of flexibility in what they can do. So I guess I feel like it's our responsibility to provide structured opportunities for students to learn habits, but that those aren't then, punitive, or policing or whatever. That if a student for some reason that doesn't work for them or help them.
One thing I noticed through this orientation this first fall was I mean, a lot of freshmen are just really worried about everything. They don't know that, like, you really don't need to be worrying about your senior year right now when you haven't even started classes yet. It's orientation. And when I used to go into high school classrooms, I would do sessions on, like, personal branding, goal building, personality assessments, and we would talk about them and how, like, different personalities can work in the workplace or work together or, stuff like that. One thing that I think would be really helpful is sometimes students are not taught simply how to use a Google Calendar or how to bookmark things. And so I think it is, and I wouldn't make them do this, but like this next orientation, I have the opportunity to have like an extra hour students can come see me aside from my regular presentation, which is just like word vomit and a ton of info. And I'm going to have them all sit down in a computer lab, and I'm going to have them look at their calendar, like their schedule, and I'm going to teach them how to put things in Google Calendar, how to make a repeating event, how to bookmark things and how to group bookmarks and like all of the, even how to use their Drive. And if they don't use any of that, that's fine if they have other tools. But from what I learned at a previous school that I was working at, when I had a group of student ambassadors that I was managing, and they worked anywhere from like 10 to 20 hours a week, that was their first couple of days was getting organized. And it was not just for the work they were doing for me.
Right.
I had them put their classes in, and some of them were not necessarily pushback. They're like, I already have a calendar. I'm like, that's totally fine. This is for me. So this is part of your job. You're getting paid to put this in your Google Calendar. So do it for me, share it with me, because then I know what your schedule is like. And after they would do it, and after I would teach them how all these like little tools, they'd be like, oh my God, this is so helpful. Or sometimes they want to use both calendars. Like, I have a handwritten one, but I also want this Google Calendar. And it's because like, a lot of times people will feel apprehensive to try something that is outside of what they already have going on.
They've got a system or structure that works for them, but maybe not in the best possible way.
Well, and they don't know like, oh, this could make things even easier for me. Because sometimes people have this idea of, oh, if I have to learn something new, that in itself is more difficult, learning something new versus just doing what I've always done.
Or it's another task I have to do on top of my other things.
Exactly. Yeah. But then if you try something new and then you realize that it's like way better than your current system, it could cut down time for lots of future things.
I think that's right.
Yep. Like even showing, one thing is I had showed somebody how to create a repeating event, so like on your calendar. Yeah. So it happens and you can give it a deadline, all this stuff, and they're like, oh my gosh, I was going in every week and trying to put in every single thing. And I'm like, you don't got to do that. So I think that encouraging the habit building and showing them is really great. But like I wouldn't force or tell them like, you have to use this. This is the only way we do it here.
I mean, I do think that people that professional, whoever, faculty, staff, people in the workplace who've been like using technology for the purposes of organizing and learning all these streamlining processes make a lot of assumptions about what they think every student already knows, right? And I think that's, it's our job to like help students learn those tools and use, adapt them.
I kind of go in assuming that they don't know anything. If I'm like training, I used to train people and stuff like that, and I would have them physically do it. Like if I'm teaching somebody how to use their calendar, I'm not going to click through my own calendar and be like, that's how you do it. I'm like, here, pull your laptop out. And students could attest to this. I'm sure students could tell you, I met with Lauren in the first couple of weeks and she made me get my calendar out and she made me put my laptop out, showed me how to do all this. Because I could just do it for you. Or I could show you how to do it yourself so that the next time, I'm happy to have you come to me, but I'm going to help you help yourself too. I think that that's important too, is not just like, that's the one thing when it comes to like teaching, learning, like training someone. If you just talk at them instead of, and that's why like our classes and all the labs we have, it's like actually applying your skills. But same thing even with like habit building. If you're just like, this is how I do it, and that's it, and then you don't like physically have them do it, it won't sit in their brain. Same thing with my orientation presentation, and I'm like, I don't expect you to remember any of this. Because you're hearing me and I'm just blabbing at you. We're not doing anything together.
Yeah. So the book, and I almost thought about, Holly, you probably had this because you've been a professor for a while too, is, that wasn't like a slight about your age. I hope you no. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
What? Yeah.
No. So
I'm a normal age for doing the thing I am doing.
So
you are the age that you are. That is how age works.
So you are the age that you are.
Have you? You've had students that have came at the end of the semester that aren't doing well in your class, and say like, "Is there anything I can do?" And usually my thing is like, well, like, you could do all the work. We call that a Herculean effort, right? And there's a reason why we spread it out across an entire semester, because you're probably behind in all the rest of your classes. I don't want to make assumptions, but normally that's the case.
Yes.
And so usually my advice is to find the class that you can do the best in, or the classes, but anyways, and maybe that's not the best advice, but the other thing...
There is no one best advice, because all sorts of students have all different...
But the other thing is, like, the book I read after getting my PhD, which I should have read way before, was this book called Atomic Habits. You've probably seen it. It was
Nope,
like a
I have not.
bestseller. Anyways, I'd recommend it. It's just basically about how to build habits, and like how to build skills and all that stuff, and like how to set up these systems. Anyways, I kind of want to make that like, okay, you're not doing so well in the class. I realize this is a digital logic class or a microcontroller class, but since you're not doing well, read this book and come and tell me about it, and I'll give you some extra credit. You know what I'm saying? And so not necessarily addressing the class problem. I mean, the idea is to address the root problem,
Right,
and then
yeah.
you can maybe address the class. That's something, and maybe I'll start doing that. Now, so students are going to listen to this, and they're going to expect me to do it.
Do students listen to it?
Yeah, some students do, I think, yeah.
I just had somebody in my office who came down and they were chatting with me and then they were like, "So you fell off a roof?" And I was like, "Did you listen to the podcast episode?" They're like, "Yep." So they're listening.
It's part of the zeitgeist.
The
now.
zeitgeist. It is limo.
Yeah.
Limo is part of the zeitgeist.
So, I think we should probably close up. I got to ask you the last question. What album do you recommend? Like, just what do you recommend someone listens to right now after listening to this podcast, or maybe sometime later? What's the album?
I mean, Blood Sugar Sex Magic by the Red Hot
man,
Chili
yeah.
Peppers. I've been
Yeah.
revisiting that. That's the last thing I downloaded on YouTube. It's like one of the greatest albums of all time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm going with.
That's
That's what I'm going with.
That makes me really excited.
You're gonna go home and listen to it?
Maybe. Yeah.
Do you actually listen to all the songs and albums of people?
I
Do you?
have not listened to all of them.
Okay.
I do listen to some of them. I haven't listened to all of them, but I do have plans to like put together like a playlist.
playlist,
Yeah, a playlist, like a
yes.
limo
Oh, that'd be
playlist
awesome.
of like what people recommend.
It's going to be so eclectic.
Yeah, it's going to be extraordinarily eclectic. Like the last or 2 episodes ago, there was like someone recommended an alt rock album, and then someone recommended like it was like I feel like it was operatic, like screamo type, something along those lines.
It's called opera metal.
Opera metal,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's really cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and then I think Tucker on the last episode was Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh, I love Gordon Lightfoot.
I do love Gordon Lightfoot too. Yeah, and then Dennis was John Mellencamp, I believe.
Oh, that John
That's
Mellencamp's
so
also
great.
good.
Yeah.
Oh, I also recommend Exile in Guyville by Liz Phair and Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette. Just like stuff I was listening
Love
to in
Alanis
1995.
Yeah,
Liz Phair was one like probably changed my life, honestly, that album. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Do you know who Enya is? You guys know who Enya is?
I mean, that's who I was listening
Okay.
to alongside those other ladies, probably. Yeah.
I was at the DT like a couple weeks ago. I never go there. I don't really like that place. But
don't
I'm
know what
glad
it
I
is.
was there that
The
night.
Downtowner.
The downtown,
okay.
it's some little bar down there, food and drinks and stuff. But I was sitting there and somebody played on the jukebox on repeat that one Enya song. the really
Orinoco
popular
Flow.
one. Yes, and it was just like
What
4
is
times
Orinoco Flow?
Yeah. It was 4 times in a row, and I'm sitting
Oh,
there.
it's such a good song.
And usually, like I said, it's not really my first pick of a place to go to, but I was like, I'm so glad I came here tonight. This is because everyone's like, what's going on?
Is that-
all these snowmobilers are like, what's going on?
So that's like a pretty operatic-y type song thing, or
It's like classical music. She did music for like the Lord of the Rings movies
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
So yeah. But it's like, I'll have to send you the song.
That was on the
because
I probably know the
Like,
song.
that
Yeah,
was
it's like
like
one of the
not
top
yet.
songs. Yeah, I
once
probably
you
know.
hear it, you're like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just a weird thing to be playing at a bar at like 11 o'clock at
Yeah,
night. you know?
totally.
Yeah, that makes me happy.
It was good.
Excellent. Well, Holly, thank you so much for giving us some insights in the world of Jeopardy.
Yeah,
And
thanks for
other
having
stuff.
me. Very nice to meet and learn more about you. Learn more. I mean, I guess I learned a little bit more about your organizational approaches.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Coolio. All right.
Now we can follow your chart on your website.
Yeah,
right.
You can give me crap if you happen to
I'll
look
line
at it.
everything.
And see
Can
it's
we
really
add
bad.
comments and just be like, what the hell? Is it a function? Can you
I
functional?
suppose I could add
Is there
that.
a function?
I could add that on there. So if you are ever interested and you do want to learn about me, am I digital a lot? If you don't want to, I'm not.
Well,
gonna
I don't know. There's just something a little weird, I feel like, of like learning about people just by their publicly available online stuff.
Well, Okay, so real quick, the reason why I
But
have
the line between stalking and learning is,
yeah,
you know,
well, actually the
can
tag
be
Never stalk
blurry.
everybody.
Yeah.
I put the tagline on my website, so it says like Shane Obelair, and it says underneath that, stalking me has never been easier.
Oh,
And so
I think I do know that because I think I did go to your website.
yeah. So, anyways, so I have every semester my digital logic students, I have them like ask me a question, like an AMA thing, and so it's like an anonymous thing. And so now there's like 700 questions. There's like 20% of them are like the same question over and over again.
Yeah.
But so I could take that same thing and
should.
put like a dude, WTF is going on with
Yeah,
your
like
productivity.
what do you think about my productivity?
Yeah, I'll do that.
I like the idea.
Just don't tell my boss. Okay. All right.
I do. Wait.
Thank you so much. Keep it real, everybody.